We visited the Minuteman National Historic Park in Lexington, Massachusetts on October the 1st and 2nd, 2021. If you would like to get notices when I post again, be sure to subscribe right here. Just click on that button. The British left Boston on April the 19th, 1775, had a battle at Lexington, and then traveled on to Concord, where the next battle was, before fleeing back to Boston, being harassed along the way by the Minutemen. This is the 967 acres that this park covers. First we'll visit the North Bridge. This is where the Battle of Concord took place. Then we'll move on to the place where Paul Revere was arrested. He didn't complete his ride. Then we'll go to the Visitor Center, where we'll explore what happened in this area. And lastly, we'll go to Lexington Battle Green, where we will look at where the first battle took place on this day. And that will end our first day. Then we'll go back on the second day to the North Bridge area and see the Old Manse and tour around it. Then we'll take a tour of the Orchard House. And that'll end our time in the park. This park was established on September 21st, 1959, and has a little over 1 million visitors each year. There are actually two different ways of getting through the park. One is to drive on A2, the highway. The other is to walk on the Battle Road, which is actually where the original road ran. You can see it here, and the dotted line as it goes through the park. You can take either route if you want to. The dotted line is the original road in this area, and it is the route the British would have taken going and coming from Concord. For our next historical site, we're heading north out of Boston toward Lexington and Concord. We'll be going to the Minuteman National Historical Park. This is the area where the Revolutionary War started. It's a long park with a road down through the center. We'll see the Visitor Center today, the North Bridge, the place where Paul Revere was captured, and the Lexington Green. The park to some extent follows the route that the British took from Boston as they headed toward Concord. Our first stop will be the Visitor Center. It's a relatively long walk because you have to park almost a half a mile away in order to walk over to it. Inside we learn how the British left Boston, came to Lexington where they met resistance, and then went on to Concord to try and find weapons. We also learned that not just Paul Revere, but also Dr. Samuel Prescott also rode to tell of the coming of the British. And on the way back they had skirmishes with the various Minutemen. Now let's drive along the park road as we go. I speeded this drive up to 4x just so you can see the whole thing. We'll be driving from the Visitor Center to the Old North Bridge. We're driving down Highway 2A, which is the central part of the park. It's a very long, narrow park, and you can see how long it would have been for the British to walk to get through this. They had to march this entire way. Now we're in Concord and heading toward North Bridge. And now we're arriving at the National Historical Site of the Old Manse. It's a place where several authors lived, and we'll be looking at it in a few days. But right now we're headed over to the North Bridge to look. Let's listen to the National Park's explanation of what happened here.
Early on the morning of April 19th, 1775, the countryside was alive with the news of a British redcoat force, about 700 strong, marching toward Concord from Boston. As the redcoats marched into town, Concord's minute and militia companies withdrew to the hills beyond the river. The commander of the British soldiers, Lieutenant Colonel Francis Smith, divided his men and sent them throughout the town to search for military supplies known to be hidden there. One detachment was sent over the North Bridge to search for stores and cannon hidden at Barrett's farm, a mile and a half further down the road. 3 companies, about 96 men, were posted between the bridge and the colonial militia. 4 companies proceeded to Barrett's farm. Meanwhile, the colonists were joined by men from the surrounding towns, increasing their numbers to more than 400 men. As the colonials watched in horror, smoke began to rise from the center of Concord. The redcoats were burning some captured supplies, but the colonists feared the town had been set on fire. At a brief council, Joseph Hosmer demanded,
"Will you let them burn the town down?"
The colonial officers led their men down the hill. The redcoats pulled back to this side of the bridge and prepared to defend themselves. They fired warning shots, but the colonists continued to advance. The redcoats then fired a volley, this time into the colonial ranks. 2 colonists were killed, Isaac Davis and Abner Hosmer, both of Acton. Major John Buttrick shouted the order,
"Fire, fellow soldiers, for God's sake, fire!"
For the first time, Americans were ordered to fire on the King's troops. 2 redcoats were killed and 9 wounded, including 4 of the 8 officers present. Confused and outnumbered more than 4 to 1, the redcoats retreated hastily to the center of town. The fight at the North Bridge was over. At about noon, the redcoats began marching back to Boston. On the eastern edge of Concord, the fighting resumed and escalated. The redcoats hurriedly retreated back to Boston with the colonial militia at their heels.
Now we're going to drive back toward Lexington. Along the way, we're going to stop at the Paul Revere arrest site. He was arrested before he got all the way to Concord, but he did get to warn Lexington. Through the park there are 2 things. You can drive on Highway 2A, but there's also what's called the Battle Road, which actually follows the road where the people walked in the time of the Revolutionary War. And it's a walking path today. Here you can see both Highway 2A and the Battle Road. And this is where Paul Revere was arrested. They didn't keep him long. They turned him loose and he walked back to Lexington. And Samuel Prescott went on ahead to Concord to warn the people, and this is the Battle Road. And now let's head to Lexington. Lexington was a very small town at the time of the Revolutionary War, and here we are driving into Lexington, a much larger town today. The British had heard that there were many arms being gathered at Concord, and they were trying to capture those weapons and keep the war from happening. The men of Lexington gathered on their Lexington Common, their green, and tried to stop the British. And here we are driving past the Commons. It's still there today. We turn around and come back and park and look at it just a little bit. Here we will look at the statue and also look out at the Battle Green, as it is now called. This is where the battle took place. And here's a statue of the Minuteman. Let's listen to a video of the battle.
No obstacles, sir. Shall we pass them by?
We will not. Hold your fire. Keep ranks. Captain Parsons, home front. Hold steady. Hold steady. Do not fire. Do nothing without day begin at first. Prepare to fix bayonets. Fix your bayonets! Shoulder your bayonets! Lay down your arms. Disperse. Get off the King's Green.
We are here to talk.
Talk of what?
This is our green.
Lay down your arms and there will be no trouble. Disperse at once in the King's name.
We are gathered here peacefully.
Hold your fire. Charge your bayonets! Advance and disarm them. Disperse, men! Don't fire!
Stand fast, Derek!
Militia, retire! Get off the green!
This ends our first day, and now we'll begin our second day of touring. And now it's time to head to our next stop, the Old Manse. It's near the North Bridge, which we were at yesterday. That's where the Battle of Concord was fought. And soon we're arriving at the Old Manse. Manse means parsonage or place where pastor lives. You can see it's very near the Old North Bridge. This was built in 1770 in a Georgian style. Mary Beth was our guide on our tour. In 1770, a Unitarian minister, William Emerson, and his wife moved in here and lived here. He was a patriot minister, and he preached freedom. He fought in the Battle of Concord, and later at Fort Ticonderoga, he was the chaplain there, where he died of typhoid fever. As a widow, she took in boarders. The first one was the new pastor at the church, Reverend Ezra Ripley. Eventually, they'll marry and have 3 children. At her death, her son William Emerson took over the house with his wife, and they had 8 children, one of which was the great Ralph Waldo Emerson, who wrote in 1835 Nature here. He built Wayside and rented this out to his good friend Nathaniel Hawthorne, who had just gotten married. His wife Sophia was an accomplished artist, making many paintings, and also a very accomplished sculptor and writer. The shy and antisocial Hawthorne was an unknown at this time. He thought by writing where Ralph Waldo Emerson had written Nature that he could absorb some of that writing skill, and he eventually did produce his first book here, Mosses from an Old Manse. In 1845, when he moved out, Sarah Alden Bradford Ripley moved in, maybe one of the most educated women in New England. Some have called her the most famous and gifted professor Harvard ever had who didn't attend there. After all, being a woman, she had to be self-educated. She taught herself to speak 5 languages, the classics by heart, chemistry, metaphysics, theology, and many other studies. Harvard would regularly send her students to be tutored that were failing classes. She had 9 children and taught, did housework, and also taught in the literary societies around the Concord area. Next person to move in was her daughter Elizabeth Bradford Ripley, and she lived here until she died, and then it was used as a vacation home by the family for about 50 years, and then in 1938 it became a museum. And now let's look around the house some. The original William Emerson brought with him an 8-day Dublin clock that still works today. He also brought him a cherry desk, for he wanted to use this as his study. He had to saw the legs off because it was too tall. And this is a picture of him leaving to go to Fort Ticonderoga.
One of the most infamous pieces in the home is left right here on this window pane, and I'm going to move away because if you look askance, you will see the engravings on the window. I'll read to you what they say. These were done by Sophia Peabody with her diamond ring, and on it she wrote, "Endymion painted in this room, finished January 20, 1844. That's the last piece of art she ever produced in her lifetime, and we'll talk more about that later. She also wrote Una Hawthorne, that's their beloved daughter born in this home in 1843. She wrote, Una Hawthorne stood on this windowsill January 22, 1845, while the trees were all glass chandeliers. A goodly show which she liked much, though only 10 months old."
And now let's move over to the parlor and look at some of the things there. The Reverend Ezra Ripley used to write his sermons standing at this desk, and it's still where it was at that time. Now we go to the entrance hall and up the stairs and look at the hall upstairs and its bookcases. This room is called the writing room because it's where several authors wrote their materials. This is a reproduction of the chair Ralph Waldo Emerson built in order to write Nature. And across the room is a desk that Nathaniel Hawthorne built to write his writings, and the chair is the one he sat in. Next we'll move to what's called the Hawthorne bedroom. This wallpaper is a reproduction of a piece of the original found in the closet, and Hawthorne liked to sit here and do his writings. This bed that they have in the room has no box springs, so you have to tighten the cords. Sleep tight and don't let the bed bugs bite. And last room upstairs we'll look at is the master bedroom. Notice they still have a bedpan here, as Ripley did bring indoor plumbing, and many children were born in this room and laid in this cradle. And now we move downstairs to the small parlor, or ladies' parlor. This is where Sarah Ripley taught the Harvard students. And if you'll notice, this is an original stamp on the wallpaper to show that they paid the taxes. Now we move into the kitchen. The servants usually stayed here, and the family spent very little time here. It was a fairly modern kitchen and had one of the earliest stoves they are around. They kept water hot all day on the pan just to the right of the fireplace, and that was a luxury that they could wash laundry and other things. And this is a picture of that original stove.
This is the shower. So you would put it flat down on the floor, you'd come in naked as a jaybird, stand in it, the help would throw warm water over you, you soap up, and then the help would throw warm water over you again, and there's your shower. You leave the humidity outside, apparently.
And now it's time for us to head on down the road. We're going to drive this at 4X just so you can see the entire trip from here to the Orchard House. We drive by the Orchard House and go to the parking area. Next door is the home that Nathaniel Hawthorne moved into, Wayside, after he left the Manse. The Alcotts originally lived here, but they got kind of poor, and so they had to move into their Orchard House, and Hawthorne bought it and remodeled it extensively. We're not going to be able to go there. We're going next door to the Orchard House, where Louisa May Alcott grew up. Bronson Alcott moved into this house in 1857. He was a leader of the American Transcendental Movement and lived here for 20 years. He had 4 daughters, the most famous of which was Louisa May Alcott. She was born near Philadelphia in 1832 and served in the Civil War as a nurse. She came home sick and started writing and wrote the book Little. Over 10 million copies of it have been produced in 50 different languages. It had 2 sequels, many movies, plays, opera, and even a musical made up. She based it on her family. Anna became Meg, Louisa became Jo, Lizzie became Beth, and May became Amy, and they did call her mother Marmee. She also wrote 219 poems and sketches. Her contemporaries, Henry David Thoreau and Nathaniel Hawthorne, had a great influence in her life. We'll start off looking at the Hillside Chapel that was built in 1880 as a school for transcendentalism. Now it's time to look at the house. It was a small house, and so her father took and put a tenement house next to it to make it bigger. In the dining room they sang and danced and did dramas and plays, and the people sitting in the parlor had a curtain so they could draw it back and forth. And now let's head upstairs. Upstairs are 4 bedrooms. We're going to look at 2 of them. This is May's bedroom. And this is Louisa May's bedroom and writing room. She spent most of her time up here writing. Now we head back down to the living room, and here's a portrait of Louisa May Alcott to end. And now we now come to the end of this video.